She stood beneath the blinding lights, not on stage, but alone in her Los Angeles penthouse, a glass of red wine in hand, a love song playing softly in the background, one she had written for him before everything shattered. Rihanna, global icon, fierce, untouchable, but not tonight. Tonight, she let herself feel, and for the first time in years, she regretted letting someone back in. His name was Miles Carter, an acclaimed director, known for moody films and darker truths. They had met years ago. They burned fast and crashed faster. He was brilliant, but toxic. She knew it. Everyone knew it. But when he showed up again, cleaner, calmer, changed, she let him in, just for coffee, then dinners, then laughter, then the nights. Her friends warned her, her team begged her, but Rihanna didn't. Want advice? She wanted to believe, and for a while, it worked. She wrote again. She smiled more. She talked about a new project, one they'd do together, a love story, real, raw, autobiographical, but behind the script, a darker draft was being written, and she was not the author. It started with whispers, then silence, then lies. Rihanna noticed the changes, missed calls, late nights, scripts rewritten without her name. He said he was just fixing the pacing, but she wasn't blind. She was just hoping she was wrong. One evening she showed up unannounced at his studio. Inside, she heard her own voice echoing on the screen, her demo vocals, her lyrics. But the lead actress wasn't her. It was Cassie Vale, a rising starlet, young, blonde, flawless, and too familiar. Rihanna had seen her before, at a party, at his place. In his demise, her chest tightened, not from heartbreak, from humiliation. She had been played again, but this time it wasn't just love. It was her name, her work, her legacy. He had used her to launch a film, one she thought they were creating together, and now, he was preparing to premiere it at Cannes. Rihanna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She left the studio, walked into the night, and made a call. "Let's move the tour up," she said, "and book me the Super Bowl." Her revenge would not be petty. It would be public. The headlines exploded within days. Rihanna returns. The queen of reinvention. Super Bowl surprise incoming. But no one knew the real reason. Not yet. She didn't need to tell the world. She would show them. While Miles walked the red carpets in Europe, smiling next to Cassie, Rihanna was assembling her army. Producers, dancers, designers, every creative mind she trusted, and none of them knew why. All they heard was one thing: this performance will change everything. Backstage, she was calm, focused, almost too calm. And then the lights went black. The Super Bowl halftime show began. A single spotlight, her silhouette, a heartbeat. Then dash boom, the first line: "You took my trust, dressed it in gold, then sold it for cheap applause." The crowd roared. But in the VIP suite at Cannes, Miles turned pale. He knew each verse. Each lyric was a blade, a story of betrayal, played out live to millions. Cassie watched in silence. She had no idea. She was the villain in Rihanna's anthem by the time the final beat dropped. Rihanna stood atop a floating stage, surrounded by flames, eyes locked on the camera. She whispered, "This time, I wrote the ending." The performance went viral. Within minutes, clips flooded. TikTok, fan theories exploded. On Twitter, YouTubers dissected every frame. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a show. It was a statement. Miles tried to act unbothered. He called it artistic coincidence. He even congratulated her in an interview. She's always been theatrical. But behind the smiles, his world was crumbling. Critics began connecting. The dots, the script, the stolen lines, the studio leaks. Cassie Vale went silent. Her PR team refused interviews. Suddenly, the film felt tainted. Sponsors pulled back. Red carpet invites vanished. The Cannes premiere cancelled, and Rihanna, she didn't say a word. Instead, she dropped a surprise album. Glass Skin, 12 tracks, 12 wounds, 12 truths, 12/7, Fade to Gray. It's Bridge. A voicemail. Miles' voice, apologizing, begging. He never thought she kept it. She did, and now, so did the world. Asterisk, the voicemail broke the internet. It played at the end of Fade to Gray, just 30 seconds. But it was enough. I messed up, Ree. I didn't mean to, ... You were right. You always were. Call me, please. The world didn't just hear regret. They heard weakness. They heard ego shattered. Rihanna never acknowledged it publicly. Not once. She didn't need to. She had already won. Miles Carter became a symbol, not of genius, but of what happens when you gamble with the wrong heart. Cassie. She was replaced in 2 major productions. Suddenly, directors said she had image issues. Rihanna never celebrated their fall. She didn't laugh. She didn't post. She stayed above it, because this was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming the narrative. The industry watched carefully. They whispered at after-parties. They studied her moves. She had become something rarer than famous unstoppable. Asterisk, the world listened. The world chose sides, and for once, the industry didn't protect the director. They celebrated the survivor. Glass Skin topped every global chart, not because it was catchy, but because it was true. Every lyric was a scar, every beat, a heartbeat reborn. She didn't need interviews. She didn't need to explain. Her silence was louder than any press release. Miles, he disappeared. A scandal, a fall from grace, and no one missed him. Rihanna, she didn't just recover. She ascended, not as the woman wronged, but as the woman who rewrote the ending. She turned heartbreak into art, betrayal into fuel, and pain into power. The final image, Rihanna on stage in Tokyo, her voice soft, her eyes unblinking. She sings the final verse. You wrote me out, so I rewrote the world. Lights fade, curtains drop, and in the dark, a single spotlight follows her off stage. She never looks back, not once. Asterisk, months passed. The storm faded, but Rihanna didn't single quotes. She was everywhere, award shows, magazine covers, late-night performances. But something had changed. She was louder in her silence, braver in her softness. People expected a diss album. Instead, they got a masterpiece of healing. Track 11, Untold, a love song, but not to anyone else, to herself. She sang about forgiveness, not for them, but to free herself. I muted your voice, blocked your shadow, and liked my own reflection for the first time. It became an anthem, played in breakups, played in mirrors. She wasn't chasing closure. She was closure. Meanwhile, Miles resurfaced in a podcast, gray, tired, rebranding himself as a misunderstood artist. But his words felt hollow, his name irrelevant. For once, the headlines had moved on, and they followed her. Not the scandal, not the betrayal, her rebirth. Asterisk, 1 year later. The Grammys. Rihanna sat front row. No date, no distractions, just a pen in her clutch, and a list of new producers. She was nominated for Album of the Year, but when they called her name, she didn't flinch. She stood, walked slowly, and smiled at the camera. Her speech, 12 words. 2. Every woman who's ever been used, create. Don't collapse. The crowd erupted. Some cried. Some stood in awe. Some whispered, she's untouchable now. Backstage, she turned to her team and said, all right, that chapter's closed. Let's write a new one. The lights faded behind her, and for the first time in years, she felt light. Not because she got revenge, because she didn't need it anymore. Asterisk, it didn't end at the Grammys. That night was only the beginning. Rihanna's story, her silence, her art, her rise, sparked something bigger, not a trend. A movement. Young artists, especially women, began telling their truths, unfiltered, unapologetic. Songs flooded the charts, raw, emotional, bold. They weren't chasing hits. They were chasing healing, and every time a new voice broke through, journalists called it the Rihanna effect. Universities taught her comeback as a masterclass in power reclamation. PR experts studied her strategy. Therapists cited her lyrics. She had become more than an icon. She was now a blueprint. Even those who once doubted her, those who whispered about overreacting, now looked back, ashamed of their silence. As for Miles, he self-published a memoir, sold only 3,000 copies. He called it misread. Rihanna never commented. She didn't have to, because real legacy doesn't live in arguments. It lives in impact. Years later, a young girl stood in front of a mic, her first award. She clutched it tightly and said, "To the woman who taught us to bleed on Betrayal, this is yours too." And somewhere backstage, Rihanna smiled, not for the fame, but for the future she helped create. The years moved on, but some echoes never faded. Rihanna wasn't in the tabloids anymore. She wasn't on tour. She wasn't trending. She was building a foundation for female creators, studios, scholarships, grants for artists silenced by ego-driven systems. Her focus, not revenge. Rebirth. She mentored, in secret, showed up at surprise writing sessions, gave credits where the industry never had. She didn't want the spotlight. She wanted to pass it. And quietly, she began writing again, not for her, not for charts, for a girl 16 years old, broken-hearted, just like she once was. That girl's first song went viral, not because of shock, but because of truth. And when she accepted her first award, she held a worn envelope in her hand. Inside a handwritten note, "You don't owe the world your pain, but if you choose to share it, let it free you, not define. You are." Rihanna watched from the back of the room. No cameras, no announcements, just a soft nod, and then she left. Out the back door, into the night. No stage, no curtain call, just a legacy, still unfolding.